All right, welcome to the Sports Guys. Tonight we get into the NBA. We're really excited about that. We have just come off the NBA trade deadline. We've just come off the NBA All-Star weekend. The games are starting back this week. Tonight we're going to talk about that trade deadline. What were some of the big trades and small trades that happened at the deadline? We're going to talk about the All-Star game. Were they able to resuscitate the All-Star weekend? It really had kind of gone to pot the last couple of years. And there's some people that think that maybe this year's game started to bring it back to its old tradition. And then we're also going to talk about what can we do in general just to make the NBA game better. What are some rule changes that might really help? So tonight we welcome Cole Houck. How you doing, Cole?
Hey,
I'm
Cole.
doing good. Thanks again for having me on. Really excited to talk about NBA. Football is over now, so I've started watching college basketball more than I was before. And it's the best time of year for NBA ball right after the All-Star break. So I'm really excited to get into the rest of the season, talk to you guys about what I expect.
And you've been on this program multiple times. You've become kind of like our resident NBA expert. We're really happy to have you. You bring a lot of knowledge to the table. I know you're going this weekend down to an NBA event, so that'll be really fun to hear how that goes when you get back. So how you doing,
Yeah, you got
Robbie?
to give us an update. Got to give us an update on that one. I'm doing great. Having a good week. Enjoying all the sports on. Watching lots of Olympics. And I am dialed in on college. Been watching a lot of college basketball as well. And NBA. This is really right around All-Star week is when I start to drill into the NBA a little more thoroughly. So this is I watch it before now, but I certainly am more focused on it because there's a little bit less distractions. And this is a great time to focus on NBA with March Madness hasn't really fired up yet. So this is a
Mhm.
good time to see where we are, and I'm really glad we're doing this episode because I think that it's really good to do a deep dive at this point in the season. You can really see trends forming, and with the trades all happening, a lot of teams can change their trajectory a little bit
Mhm.
to the positive or to the negative.
I'm
And
looking
then
forward to
there's the
getting your
tanking.
yeah. We're going to talk about that. We'll talk about the
Yeah.
tanking. So I want to get your perspective. I want to get Cole's perspective. And guys, tell me. We'll start with Cole. Your overall impressions of the first half of the season as we get ready for the stretch run. What were some of the big themes for you, kind of good and bad?
Oh man, I mean, first half of this year has been pretty unexpected, at least relatively speaking. There's a couple teams that I thought were going to be good and they weren't as good. So a bunch of teams I thought were going to be pretty good, but they were much better than I expected. The Detroit Pistons, as people come to mind,
Mm-hmm.
they are, I think, a game and a half behind the Thunder. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Thunder have been, waning a little bit recently, but they have been, spectacular. They had a fight with the Hornets game the other day. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that was really fun to
Mm-hmm.
watch. So
It was.
they got some guys suspended. Yeah, they should come down a little bit, but they are solidly ahead of everybody else in the East and competing right up there with the best teams in the West. And then there's the Spurs. I also don't expect them to be as good as they were. A bunch of young
Mm-hmm.
guys trying to make it work. Mitch Johnson took over the role as a head coach over there. He's done a really good job.
Yeah.
Couple disappointing teams. The Warriors been disappointing. There's a couple other teams as well like that, but really excited to see what the moves look like on new guys going to new teams and how that plays out in the playoffs.
That's true. Yeah, that's good. What about you, Robbie? Any initial themes just from the first half of the year? Things you noticed?
I was amazed at the way OKC started the year, just blowing everyone out. Unbeatable team for a while there, and then came down to earth slightly, but they're still dominating overall. They're 5-5 in their last 10 games, so they are beatable, but a very strong squad. I don't think I've been surprised about the Spurs, but it's been pleasantly surprising to an extent that it's all coming together nicely. Um, I think my biggest surprise has been the Celtics.
Mm-hmm.
If I'll be honest, I didn't quite expect them to be that good without
Jason Tatum.
Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
So good for them. Detroit, I would have thought they'd be in the top four, but I wouldn't expect them to be leading like that. And so there's been some nice surprises, and I've been unpleasantly surprised about the Pacers. I think
I
they're
know.
always right on that.
Fell off the table. Yeah.
They're on that. They're always in playoff hunt. Always. They're one of those teams that doesn't have the stars, but they're always just really gritty and tough, and
Well,
they're not very good.
they're playing without Halliburton, and they were unable
Yeah,
to make up for Halliburton, kind of like the
yeah.
Celtics made up for Tatum. So,
A few injuries, and they just didn't have it. So
hmm
I've been surprised at how bad they are overall. And that's it. I mean, Rockets are tough. Nuggets are tough. Well,
my My big impressions this year so far have been the West again is better than the East. That's been true for probably 10 years now or so.
Yeah, no
And I
surprise
think,
there.
I think this year even more so. I think those top 4 teams in the West would beat the top team in the East potentially in a series. In whether you're talking about the Rockets or the Nuggets or the Spurs or the OKC Thunder, the defending champs. OKC last year didn't seem to have much challenge going all the way to the finals and winning it. This year they have a lot of challenge. They have a lot of problems in the West. I think that to get through some of those 7-game series they're about to get through is going to be really tough. So East, Detroit is the story of the entire season. They are this year's OKC Thunder in the East. They've piled up a couple of good drafts in a row, and now they're starting to really show with Cade Cunningham. And I still think they're the prohibitive favorite to get to the finals. I think the Celtics will challenge them, but I think the Pistons are the prohibitive favorite.
Cole, did you see the Detroit Pistons being this good at the beginning of the season?
No.
Was this foreseeable? Because not to me, I didn't see it.
I mean, I knew that they had success. I think they either beat the Knicks or they took the Knicks really tough in the playoffs. So they showed signs of being this good. But I didn't think this roster was good enough to do stuff like this. Cade has been doing what he has been, but there's so little shooting on this team. They just play really good defense and really good team ball. They play good in clutch time as well. It's not sustainable, especially in today's NBA. They need more space than what they have, but it has been a lot of fun to watch them. They're much better than anybody, I think, besides Piston fans would have predicted them to be.
Do you think your Toronto Raptors are what you thought they'd be this year?
Yes and no. I think they are performing to what my highest expectation, like, the absolute most optimistic what they could have done. They are up there. I said, at best, we are probably a first or second round team. We're sitting right at 4 or 5 right now. In the playoffs, relatively comfortable. We're three games ahead of the play-in, with 27-ish games left. So I'm really happy about that. But there's still questions. Everybody's been really healthy, which is what I'm more worried about than anything else. Just trying to remain healthy for the rest of the year. Brandon Ingram, RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Jakob Poeltl has been battling through a lot of stuff. But we've been winning without really a center rotation. We signed Mamu Kelishvili. He's a very good power forward center, 6'11". He's actually one of our better free agents ever. But yeah, I'm just really happy where we are right now. Didn't expect them to be this good, but I'm hoping that we stay around there and just, can do well in the playoffs, force a game 6 or 7 in the first round, maybe make a second round as well. It'd be really nice and really for the last few years that we have not been very good.
So other surprises for me in the first half, the Lakers have been substantially better than I thought. I thought they would be kind of a play-in team along with the Warriors. And just like they were last year, both of them getting the play-in team, and the Lakers is substantially better than a play-in team this year. So they've been surprising. The Charlotte Hornets, of course, my team, having a really horrific start to the point where they almost were out of it, and then they go on this huge run where they're winning 9 out of 10, and they just really look like not just a playoff team, but really one that could make some noise.
Competitive one.
And they put this really nice young nucleus together, and they found the right starting lineup. And I think their coach is really energetic, and he's given them a boost. So they've been a surprise. And then Rob mentioned the Pacers. They've just been abysmal, and I don't know exactly what happened. And I would say the Cleveland Cavaliers, who came in the number 1 seed last year, have been really somewhat disappointing this year, which is why they made the move at the deadline, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The Cavs were supposed to be better. We had seen how good this team was the last few years. They've been consistently winning games, being a 1 or 2 seed in the East, but never quite performing how they're supposed to in the playoffs.
Yep.
So this year, it doesn't surprise me that when stuff started falling down, they still had, draft capital and young guys that they decided to go kind of make a move. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I'm really excited to talk about the Charlotte Hornets. I was just talking about them recently that I am so happy that they're doing this good. Like it is very relieving for the Hornets fans like you guys to be, have a successful team, a team that has been winning games. They were 4-14 to start. Brandon Miller missed a lot of that. This team is actually 3-14 without Brandon Miller when he's when he's been injured. So he has been a vital role. The starting 5, like you said, you have the 3 guys: LaMelo, Khan, Miller, and then Moussa Diabate and Bridges. When those 5 are there, they actually have one of the best starting lineups, like metrics, ratings overall. And they played pretty good minutes together. They won 9 games in a row going into the Pistons game. I'm just really, really happy for this team. I'm happy for all the players. And I'm hoping they can lead into playoffs.
One of the guys who has been a contributor that they traded away because they got Kobe White was Colin Sexton. I was kind of hoping they would keep him. but he was on a 1-year deal, and I know that they were concerned that he was going to end up going somewhere else anyway. So they wanted to get some capital and get somebody back for him they could, build for the long term. But I will say Colin Sexton's a guy that I really liked how he played this year. But it's been fun. I mean, the Hornets fans, we've been long suffering for 2 decades now, waiting on a team. We finally got one that can compete. So good stuff.
Yeah, they have a really competitive starting five, and starting to build a little depth. I think the future is pretty bright, I think, for Charlotte.
I think so too. I'm looking
And
It's a
forward
lot
these
of
to it.
guys
dependent on health.
they play well together.
Mm-hmm.
It's
So
still dependent on the health,
Cole,
though. They've had
yeah,
problems with health for years now.
it's
Now
true.
everybody's been healthy, and that's been really good for them. It's just as long as they can stay healthy, there's a good
Yeah.
product out there. You just got to find it,
Mainly
One of
LaMelo. Every single year he's played, he's missed 20 to 30 games, and we just can't have that. He's got to be on the floor.
there's two factors that usually contribute to health of your players, and that's age and that's depth. If you can rotate and stay fresh, you're not pushing that Achilles to snap.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not, and also young guys bounce back. They're out for a couple games and they're back in. Older
Mm-hmm.
guys, the veterans, are out for huge chunks of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go with a youth movement that gets a little experience early on, and you get deep, you can really be, like, I guess that's kind of been Indiana's approach for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Or a lot of teams try it, but it's really tempting to go get that Luka
That's
player,
true.
that veteran that but you kind of pay a price because you give up depth.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, it looks like the Lakers, last year really were missing a center, and I think Ayton has fit in well with them. They
Yeah.
finally have a center position. They can play around him, and they've found ways to kind of mitigate the problems they've got defensively with Luka, because Luka is a bad defender, but they found all
Mhm.
kinds of scheme ways to kind of close some of his gaps. So it's been good.
I was going over the roster for the Lakers. I was a little bit impressed with. There's some quality on there. It's not usually that deep when you
Mm-hmm.
when you put stars together with LeBron. You're going to have a very pitiful bench.
It's true.
And I was kind of impressed. I went down to the deeper part of the Lakers team, that you don't ever see in the game, but you got a little depth there, and so they're not far away from being really competitive to make a run.
So last question for you, Cole, and I know you talked a little bit about this on your excellent podcast, and at the end of the program we'll have you talk some more about your podcast. But any surprise on some of the teams that bought and some of the teams that sold in the trade deadline? Like I was very surprised Utah got into the game like they did, because we know Danny Ainge is getting a little impatient when it comes to his rebuild. They're 3 or 4 years into it now. He goes ahead and gets one of the best players in the NBA, and then they essentially put him on the bench and look like they're tanking. So I don't know. I can't figure out some of the teams that bought and some of the teams that sold. What about you?
Yeah, Cole, how would you describe the trade deadline? Would you say that it was secondary type players, a few stars, most teams did logical moves, or how would you describe overall?
Those are both good questions. I do want to say first off, Rob, I wanted to highlight what you said about the Hornets, the injuries where if you have young guys, they're less likely to get injured. You have depth where they'll play less minutes, they're less likely to get injured as well. That is exactly what the Hornets been doing this year. They got so many good guys out of the draft. You guys have, 4 guys brought in. You McNeely, Kalkbrenner, Sion James, and obviously Khan. You guys didn't have that last year. That's where it is. That's why LaMelo can play less minutes and have a lower usage. Miller can play less minutes, have a lower usage. You brought in guys like Grant Williams and PJ Washington trade. This team is deeper than any Charlotte Hornets team I think I've seen in the last decade. So you hit it right on the nose about what this Hornets team had that they didn't have last year, or why they're doing so much better right now, why they're healthy anyways. So about this deadline, I think this deadline as a whole, I was pretty happy with. I had low expectations going into it. Obviously, there were big names like Giannis and John Morant that did not get traded, and I expected them to.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look past the big guys that didn't get traded and lower expectations a little bit from what the highs that they probably weren't going to be anyways, I thought it was a really good deadline for the most part. A couple of big guys were traded. Jerry Jackson Jr. went to the Jazz, like you said. They're doing some awful tanking right now. They got fined $500,000 just a week
Yeah,
ago or
they
so
did.
for that. So
Yeah, you
Couple
go
teams got
trade.
hit.
You go trade for a top 10 player, and then you put him on the bench for the rest of the year. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
with a really kind of strange injury, I guess you could say.
Are they trying to make the case that they're trying to work him in slowly? I mean, what is their explanation?
No. No, there is no working it slowly, unfortunately. The theme of this deadline, because there weren't a ton of teams that went all in. I talked about that a lot in the podcast, was that a lot of these teams kind of stayed where they were at, which I was surprised to, especially the teams in the
Mhm.
East. The theme of this deadline was making little moves here and there to get under luxury tax, out of the
Mhm.
first and separate apron, because
Yep.
that's still a fairly new concept, and front offices are still trying to manage that and figure out how to work around that best they can. But another theme, major one, was 2027. Teams are trying to lose this year because the draft this year is very, very good, very deep. There's a lot
Mhm.
of, all-star potential, superstar potential players out there that people
Yep.
are willing to tank for and grab. So
Yep.
teams like the Wizards, teams like the Jazz, they decided to go all in on next year. They aren't going to play their guys. AD's out for the entire year with a finger injury. I think that's really funny out loud. He's not going to play until 2027. The Jazz, they're going to sit Jaren a lot. I don't know if they've said anything about Laurie Markkinen, but I think they're gonna barely play Jaren and Laurie. They've already been sitting
Mhm.
them for fourth quarters for the last week. I mean, that's why they got fined so much money pretty recently.
So
So it's
so what can
interesting.
we do about this? Because they're openly tanking. $500,000 is nothing to a $8 billion franchise. So they're going to openly tank. They're going to go try to get the superstar to add to Jaren Jackson. And what are you going to do about it?
There was I don't have the answers, unfortunately. I wish I did, or else I would, go write a letter to Adam Silver in the NBA. There is a lot that they can do, but none of it is great. So there actually was stuff, there's news this morning, I haven't read all of it yet, but they were thinking about maybe freezing the draft lottery odds after All-Star
Yeah.
or after the,
Right.
All-Star trade deadline, that sort of thing. That's an
Yep.
interesting thought. I don't love that. About a week ago, Adam Silver said we can have draft, we just get rid of the draft altogether and everybody will be free agents. There's a lot of cons with that. There's a couple pros, but a lot of cons. And, what are you supposed to do with draft picks, right? The draft is a very big thing that's been around for, a long time. If you traded a 2031 draft pick this year, what's going to happen to that if everybody becomes free agents? There's a lot, just so many questions and not a lot of
Freezing
answers.
is one
Yeah.
idea. He also mentioned removing some ping pong balls every time you have a violation. So they might start trying to do that, where if you go into the draft and you're the Jazz, you've got 8 ping pong balls. Maybe you end up with 3 at the end because you tanked
It,
some.
a couple other things. I read a whole list of proposals. Some of them sound pretty logical, and some of them sound a little hard to get your mind around. But they were talking about flattening the curve between the ping pong balls, the
Mhm.
chances of getting a top four pick. There are requirements that you can't get a top four pick more than X number of years in a row, and all this other stuff. So you have to be attempting to win. They're not going to reward tanking, and the whole goal is to make it okay if you slip a little. Maybe they build you back up with some, you know, an infusion of talented players.
Mhm.
Everyone could use a top pick, a lottery pick, but they don't want to reward people who just live in the basement. And I
Well,
don't
I
think
know.
it's really that hard. I don't think it's that complicated.
Well, Cole, I'd recommend you still write Adam Silver a letter about it because I think you'd have
Yeah.
some good ideas around it. But he is so concerned about it. He mentioned it twice over the All Star weekend in interviews. So he's very attuned to it. He knows the fans care about it. He's trying to think of ways to penalize. 500,000 is not going to get it done. So,
I kind of like I've heard one. I haven't heard it recently, but I've heard it before, where all the playoff teams play their playoff games, and the bottom teams, and you can work out how many have to play, and you try to fight for the right to have the draft order. So I think
so,
that would be
so
kind of cool,
like a little mini tournament or something.
like a
Yeah,
mini
wait, but with,
tournament.
with that
Yeah.
idea, because I heard that before maybe a couple months ago as well. With that idea, is the winner the one that gets the first overall
I
pick? Is
think
the
the
loser the one that
winner,
gets the first
yeah,
overall?
I think the winner gets the number one pick.
That'd be
That's a
fun. I'd watch
pretty
that.
big, you would do everything
I'd
in your
watch that.
power to go get the next Wembanyama, you know?
Or Cooper
You
Flag. I mean, Cooper Flag
or
shouldn't have
Cooper
gone
Flag,
to Dallas. That was ridiculous.
Okay,
Yeah.
but let me
or
add this to
AJ
the
Cabanza or whatever.
hypothetical. In the Western Conference right now, season ended today, which it won't. There's still 25, 30 games left. You'd have the Clippers would not make the playoffs, assuming that they lose in the play-in game. You have the Sacramento Kings. Also, they're, I don't know if they're eliminated right now, but they should be. They have 12
Terrible.
wins. They've lost,
They're
I think
close.
it's
They're
14 in
close
a
to
row.
gone already. Yeah.
Right. So if the Kings badly need that pick more than the Clippers do, right? The Clippers are a much
Mhm.
better team right now, but because they beat, presumably they'll beat the Kings in that tournament, they would get a better pick than the Kings. That's the issue with that, at least in my opinion.
It might not get rid of tanking entirely, but it might make people tank until that tournament, and then everyone's healthy and like, let's go. And you play as hard as you can, I guess. I don't know. But
I mean, it's a better product than what we have for the bad
yes,
teams, thinking
yeah.
teams in the second half of the year. I agree with that for sure. I don't love it as a, permanent solution, I think.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
current system, would you pay to buy a Sacramento Kings ticket?
I would, but it's because
No.
I love DeAndre Hunter. He's the only player
Yeah,
on the team
same,
I
but
know. So,
I was gonna say
but
you
yeah,
got to be a really big Russell Westbrook fan to go buy a Sacramento Kings ticket in today's
yeah.
market.
it's
I
true.
mean, you got to do something to make it exciting at the bottom, and I think that would do it for
I think
sure.
they're going to have to
You-
mess with the odds of them getting the first pick or something, or the first three
There
picks. They're
might
going to have
have
to do
there
something like
might have to be there might have to be a reverse buy system. Like the worst teams get buys.
that.
Like,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? And the best teams got to go through the gauntlet. So I don't know. There's
I,
got
Yeah.
to
li-
be
I
a
like that
way.
idea. I haven't thought about
Yeah,
that. That's interesting. I,
yeah,
I do think it kind of
yeah,
makes sense that the worst teams would get the buys. You would have the teams that are going to be better on paper, like I said, the Clippers and the Trailblazers right now in
yeah,
the West. Those are the play-in teams that are presumably not going to make the playoffs where they stand today. They would
Yeah.
have to kind of duke it out, and they would get the 11th pick instead of the
yeah.
the second pick or third overall pick, something like
Yeah.
that.
You reverse seed them, and then however everyone finishes is the draft order. It might work. I don't know. We've got ping pong balls bouncing around, and you got, you know, Dallas getting Cooper Flag when they
Ridiculous.
had almost no chance of getting it. Like
They had
that
the
doesn't make
eighth
sense
best.
either.
They had the eighth best shot of getting him. They got him. So
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. So I mean, I don't know.
You know what I will say is that the it is a lottery right now. It's what they advertise it to be. At least most people think that. I will say they have the power to just you guys. I think it was you, Tom, recommended just a minute ago that the teams that should be punished for tanking, they give them less likely of odds. They should, in theory, it's favoritism in this hypothetical. The more I'm realizing out loud here, but they should be able to say you guys clearly tank more than anybody else did. Talking about the Utah Jazz, somebody like
yep.
that, you
Yep.
guys are going to be solidified at 13. Don't do it again. Punish them for it so that they won't
Right.
do it going forward. That's how you
That's what I
that's how
think.
you make change going forward in the future.
Hmm.
I think
Exactly
it's
what they should do.
difficult, but I think it's difficult. But if you were to work on a tent, again, I understand how hard this is, but if you could differentiate between being a bad team and a tanking team, so like if you're resting your best players, some kind of formula that takes into account your top scorers being on the bench, that's tanking. If your best players score 12 a game and everyone else's best players score 27, you're a bad team. So I don't know. It's, you know what I mean? Like there's a difference
Speaking of
between tanking and being bad.
speaking of bad teams, did you guys think that the New Orleans Pelicans could be this bad 4 or 5 years into Zion's tenure and Trey Murphy and all these guys they have? I don't
Uh,
understand what has happened to that franchise. They're still the worst team in the NBA
I
after all these picks.
yeah, I
yeah.
did not see this coming. I actually I went on a little rant. It's probably a 3 or 4 minute rant in one of my podcast episodes about after the deadline about the Kings and the Pelicans not trading anybody. The Pelicans, I think I went a little bit harsher on than the Kings because the Kings just have bad contracts people don't want. Nobody wants to trade
Hmm.
for Sabonis. Nobody wants to trade for Zach
Hmm.
LaVine, DeMar
Correct.
DeRozan. Those guys, because of their contracts, are looked at as negative assets, and Kings aren't going to
Hmm.
trade future draft capital. The Pelicans, on the other hand, they have players. They have players like Zion that could get traded, like Trey Murphy that could get traded. Yves Missi is a center from Baylor a couple years ago. I wanted him on my Raptors. They asked for first round picks, so we didn't give it to him. It is the ownership over there. The management is very poor.
Hmm.
I think it's Joe Dumars came in recently. He traded that first round pick immediately as soon as he got in there. It is the health and it is the ownership. And until they figure out one of those two things, it's going to be like this for a while. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just bad. They're not tanking, they're just bad.
I
So
will say that I think I hold New Orleans in more of a contemptuous position because at least it seems like the Kings are trying to make moves for players that were underperforming and they see upside in and maybe we can
Hmm.
turn these guys around. Like they're trying something. I don't think they made good moves, but they made moves that they could explain. It
Hmm.
seems like I didn't see anything New Orleans did like that was significant in any way that you could explain
Yeah.
makes them potentially better, even if somebody turns a corner or something. I don't know.
Mhm. You guys ready to dive into the material? Here we go.
Let's
Mm.
go.
Rock and roll. All right, let's do a call out to our sponsor for tonight, and that's Academy Sports. We love Academy Sports. We go there all the time. Robbie, what do you think of Academy?
Love Academy Sports. They're incredible for all our sports needs. The boys are constantly needing upgrades. I'm going to need to go there next week probably to get baseball cleats. But we just got bikes from there and for their birthday. So I'll tell you what, they have everything we need. They have good prices, really good selection. Everything in there is really cool, and I love getting ideas for. I got an idea for your. You just had your birthday celebration at the Super Bowl party, and we got you a cooler. So it's a fantastic place. It's for all your sporting needs and all kinds of different parts of your life. Can get really good gear there. So. I recommend it very highly.
I love Academy. I go there. I like to just kind of poke around, and there's all kinds of cool departments. I've got my last two pairs of shoes there. Got my running shoes and my pickleball shoes, and it's just a great place to go. Go check out your Academy Sports locally, or check out academy.com. You can order online and do it today. Have a great one.
Hey,
All right, this is our episode 114, the NBA trade deadline and All Star game. You can see the two big logos there. We talked a little bit about this deadline, and we're going to get into each individual trade and talk about what our take is on it. And then we're going to get into the All Star game and talk about there was some positive improvement this year. They actually played a little defense. They actually were trying to win the game, so that they're make part of their way back to resuscitating the All Star game. But Rob, you and I talked about offline some of the problems with the current All Star weekend versus what it used to be, the dunk contest, the 3-point contest. Any thoughts initially about what we can do to try to bring the All Star game back?
Incentivize the best players to participate, and in the actual game, have more on the line to make it worthwhile for the players to play in it. And otherwise you're going to have the 180 to 175 games that nobody's going to watch
Yeah.
with no
Well,
defense.
the one thing I thought about we could do is make it so that whoever wins this game, go back to East and West, and whoever wins the East and West All Star game gets Game 7 in the finals, something like
That would
that.
be awesome. I'd
That's what
love
we
that.
should do. Put that on the line, and then they'll
Yeah.
care about that. You know.
I mean, that
What do you think?
reminds me of baseball,
Yeah. What do you
That's
think
what
about that,
baseball's
Cole?
doing.
Putting something big on the line like that.
Well, I like the East versus West format. Obviously, it worked for many, many years. I'm a believer in the world versus America format. I think that's a good concept. Hockey did that essentially, right? It was the four countries, the four teams, and
Yeah.
that worked out really well. People got
It
hurt
was
from
it
what I
was better
remember.
than last year. It was definitely better than last year. I will say
And
that.
Ryder Cup in golf. So
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
it's proven to work in other sports, and I think it was an improvement, a big improvement, frankly, over what the All-Star has been the last few years. Not necessarily because of the format, so I'm not sold on it, but I think it's a good idea. I had not thought about East versus West winner gets game seven. I think that's a fun idea. I think that makes a lot of sense too. Obviously, the finals would have to go to a game seven for that to matter, and a lot of finals don't go to game seven. The idea of having something big on the table, it almost seems necessary at this point to make people
I
try
think
and
so.
really care about it more.
I agree. I think they got to do something. It was a little better this year just because you got a world versus U.S. rivalry already, and they were trying to play on that, and it did work. But I don't know. There's something missing. And when it comes to the dunk contest, 2 years in a row they had to have Max McClung come in from the G League and save the dunk contest. And this year, clearly, you didn't have your best dunkers out there.
no.
So you got to figure out a way to get your best 3-point shooters, your best dunkers, and then put something on the line in the game. And then you've got a really good weekend. It really celebrates the NBA.
I think the dunk contest is my biggest concern. Is just that now, granted, dunks have been around for a while. It's hard to make an original dunk in 2026 because we've had so many fantastic dunk contests. It's tough to innovate and build on what we already have. I feel like that's something people don't really talk about enough. But we need big names in dunk contests. I mean, it's been years since
Yeah.
we've had even an all-star guy in a dunk contest. We talk about Zion and John Moran, people like that joining. Shaden Sharp is not the biggest name, but we wanted him, somebody like him, in the dunk contest for years, and he hasn't been in it. It's just I wonder if they need to put more money into the dunk contest, and I don't
Yeah.
think they'll
Something.
do
They
that,
got to
but
do
just
something.
something like
Yeah.
that to get names in there.
Because you have iconic moments like Michael Jordan taking off from the foul line. I mean, that made almost his entire career, that dunk contest.
Dominique versus Jordan.
Dominique. And
There's
then
so many iconic.
Vince Carter. Vince Carter had that unbelievable dunk contest.
I
So
think it adds a lot to the whole weekend, the dunk contest. It always did, and it doesn't anymore because everyone tunes in when there's stars and they don't when they're not. I think it pays for itself in TV revenue, to be honest with you.
I do too.
You should put a
100%.
lot of money on the line and think hard about coming up with some incentives that really hit. I felt like slam dunk contest was very weak. 3-point
Yep.
was decent, and the game was pretty good overall.
I agree.
It helped a lot with Wembanyama coming out and saying, "I'm going to play defense. We are going to try and win this." Like the stars came out before this game and said all the right things.
They really did.
They said this is going to matter to us. We want to win, and that's been missing. They're all laughing and like high-fiving the other team, and it felt really not very competitive.
Well, let's take a look at the standings. Eastern, this is about 30 games left. Like you talked about, Cole, the big team that has surprised this year, the Pistons sitting up top. Celtics right behind. The Knicks have had a really good season. Cavaliers have just put their new roster together with some of the trade moves they made. Your Raptors sitting in 5. Sixers in 6. I know there's been a lot of angst in Philadelphia that they didn't really do much at the deadline. They haven't done much in a while. And they've just been kind of sitting on this kind of mediocre team for a while. So I know there's a lot of, on sports radio in Philadelphia, they've been complaining about this team. Magic at 7 with Banchero. That team has really gotten a lot better over the years. The Heat at 8. The hottest team in the East, the Charlotte Hornets, in 9. And then the Hawks in 10. Anything else you guys want to mention or make a comment about the East right now?
Well, I just want to. I think it was Rob. It was you that said the Celtics were pretty surprising to you this year, right? You didn't expect to see them this high without Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I came on this podcast months ago and said if they knew, if it was good for the organization if they started losing games, they needed purposely. I don't want to tell people to tank, but people are going to tank, and I think the Celtics could have benefited from that. Missoula won't let that happen. Jaylen Brown has been amazing. He's pretty much been an MVP candidate this year. Actually,
He really
he
has.
has been. He's probably
Incredible.
top 5 or 6 in MVP.
Yeah.
They
I
play
agree.
good winning, form of basketball. I think the Magic have been really disappointing to me this year.
Yeah,
I,
they
I,
have.
I know 7 isn't terrible, but they made the playoffs last year. They made a big move. I think they had 5 first-round picks going to get Desmond Bane away from the Memphis Grizzlies, and they've been very poor.
They've been
Banchero
very
has not
average.
looked the same.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That coach, I'm not sure that coach is going to have a job. Jamal Mosley after this year, I think he's probably going to get fired because they've just been mediocre.
I'm glad you mentioned that because the Magic last year made that really nice run into the playoffs and played really well. And then they added a bunch of pieces in the offseason. And you thought they'd be a 4 or 5 seed at least this year. And they really have just been average. So good point.
I think it still feels like Paolo Banchero is a little bit alone out there. I know he's got some players with him, Bane and Franz Wagner's actually scoring decently. But
Mhm.
I don't know. It feels like even if they didn't miss anything from last year, there's something missing from last year.
Yeah. Any surprise that the Bucks are sitting at 23-30 only a couple years after their championship season? It just seems like they've really slipped the last couple of years, which is why I thought Giannis was going to get dealt, by the way.
Yeah,
I
I
think it's
don't
been a
know if
tricky year
it's
with Giannis.
yeah, definitely. I'm not sure if it's surprising to me. I just think they put themselves in hindsight. I think they put themselves in a really bad spot with the Damian Lillard situation. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought stretching the contract out was going to fix it, and it just can't. They don't have enough talent. They have a lot of good guys, but it's not ceiling raisers enough to make this team better than what they are. So it's
Hmm.
just they're once Giannis was not going to be healthy, they were going to be this bad. I think Thomas, you said that in the last podcast a little while ago, is that just this
Yep,
team around Giannis does not look very good, and we're seeing
that's
it
right.
right now with the record.
That's very true. Yep. Yeah, if I were him, I would demand a trade, but obviously he's not that kind of guy. He likes Milwaukee. He has a ring, but you can see how he could be flustered with this situation. They seem to be in purgatory because they're not bad enough to get in the lottery either. So they're kind of like in that weird zone where they
I've
can't really
actually
get much better.
I've actually been a little surprised. The 76ers are a little better than I thought. I thought they were going to struggle with a lot of injuries and
Hmm.
lose as a result. They're
Hmm.
hanging in there, kind of. I mean, they got
Yeah, I
good
think,
players, but I don't know.
I think
They just seem they got
Maxi's really come
injuries
on.
screaming all over them,
Mhm.
and it's not
Yeah,
happening too bad.
that's right. They're still reeling from the Ben Simmons situation. They really
Debacle.
struggled with
Yeah.
that whole situation for a couple of years there.
Yeah,
So
they have a
looking,
lot of good guards. That's what it
they
is
do.
that the Sixers have a
Max is
lot of
great.
talented
Yeah.
guards.
Hmm.
Yeah, they do.
So the West, we talked about OKC up top, and the Spurs being the real surprise of the Western Conference this year. They're really good. They've followed the OKC model and strung a couple really great drafts in a row together. Obviously, got Wemby. The Nuggets, of course, are always going to be good. They've got one of, or maybe the best player in the world, the most versatile player in the world in Jokic. And then the Rockets have put together a really nice roster. So those top four, in my opinion, might be the best four teams in basketball, or at least four out of the best five. And then, as I said before, the Lakers really surprised at five. Timberwolves have been somewhat disappointing. You know, everyone thought they've been putting a lot of players around Ant, and that one of these years they'll make a run, but it just looks like it's too crowded a West for them right now. Suns at seven, Golden State at eight. They were trying to make a move to maybe even get LeBron. There was a lot of rumors that LeBron, because this is potentially his last year, he might go to Golden State. But now we're looking at a situation where he's got a team that can actually contend. So Portland at nine, and then LA at 10, and then everybody else below is just struggling and trying to find a way. So thoughts about the West, Cole?
Yeah, the top four is exactly what you said. I think there's definitely four teams in the West that are in the top five. I think you could put the
Mm-hmm.
Pistons
Yeah, I
put the
agree.
Pistons wherever you want to in the top five, but there is a world where the top four teams in the West are better than the Pistons, better than anybody else in the East. It's what it looks like. It's a very strong
Mm-hmm.
top.
Hmm.
And I believe in the Timberwolves a lot. They picked up Ayo Dosunmu from the Bulls. We'll talk about
Mm-hmm.
that a little bit later, but I'm glad they have a point guard on that roster that isn't Mike Conley, even though he's back there again. The Lakers are interesting, like you had said. I will say the people who aren't in the play-in are fully tanking now. All five of those teams. The Grizzlies have lost four straight since the deadline. The
Yep,
Mavericks are trying to lose games. So just ignore everything below 10 essentially for the West at this point.
I couldn't agree more. The Dallas Mavericks have been shockingly bad this year too. We didn't mention them, but the fact that
But
they
how
went,
fun would
well,
it be if they had to play to get the top pick?
yeah, it's true. It's
And
very
you'd see
true.
them fighting for that thing, man.
That'd be a
Like,
cool. Just throw these 10 teams into a tournament, and whoever wins it gets the number one pick. I love that. So, any
I
thoughts
love it.
about why the Mavericks have been so bad? It just doesn't make any sense. They got a decent roster.
Yeah, it's they can't shoot. I'm not sure if it's Jason Kidd's system, but they were one of the worst shooting teams when they were healthy at the beginning of the year, at least more healthy. You know, Anthony Davis was there. And now that they're not healthy, they're old and can't shoot, and it is a train wreck over there. They had
Hmm.
um they had Cooper Flag playing the point guard, which Jason Kidd had done with Giannis about a decade ago, and that
Hmm.
helped his development in the long term, but it was poor in the short term. I expect something like that to happen with Cooper Flag as well. So he should be a good playmaker in years to come because of this, but it looks
I
very
agree.
bad right now. And
It
I
was
thought they
good.
were going to be good this year too. So hopefully they're just better next season.
It was good for his development, and he's had some monster offensive games this year. So he's already shown that he's a difference maker for them. They clearly need one or two more pieces, though. They're just not quite there yet. Robbie, anything in the West that you wanted to call out?
Uh, I like Minnesota. I'm not. I kind of expected them to be a little bit higher. Lakers have been surprising.
Hmm.
Like I said, I looked at their roster and I was kind of impressed in the deeper parts of it.
Hmm.
So Golden State feels like it's over. The party's over a little bit.
I agree.
Nobody's told them yet. Um, they're not terrible. I mean, they're good. They definitely can beat you on a given night. And Curry's still leading the team in scoring. There's still remnants of the old dynasty, but I feel like it's fallen.
Apparently, they haven't told Draymond yet, but this is the last year of the Draymond experience, and of course, he's brought them a couple rings, and he's been an incredible player for them, one of their best
Yeah,
centers ever. But it looks like they're going to be parting with him in the off season as his contract expires. So, Golden State's in for a retooling, at least around
yeah,
around Steph, and I wonder what that's going to look like. So, we'll see
Yeah.
what happens.
I will say I would not be doing my job if I didn't mention the Phoenix Suns. I did not. I don't know where this team came from, to be honest. I thought this team was going to win. I would thought they'd be about where the Mavericks are and the Grizzlies are in the standings right now, and they are 12 games above that. I mean, they Devin Booker's not even playing that good. He's not shooting well from three this year. He did good in the 3-point contest, but percentage wise, he's not been doing good. He's been one of the highest turnover players in the NBA as well, and yet they're winning. They have good depth. They have players that are 3-and-D guys, and they make winning plays. People like Dylan Brooks have been really good. You got a couple younger guys, rookies coming in that are better than I thought they were going to be. So it's
Mhm.
just they have been fantastic, and that is probably my biggest surprise out of anybody in the West.
That's a good call out. I agree. I think
yeah.
Phoenix in the West and Detroit in the East would be the two biggest. So, any thoughts about why the LA Clippers can never get it right? I mean, every year in the offseason, you hear this is the Clippers year. They've brought on this player and this veteran and that veteran, and this is the year we're going to do it. And then they always end up languishing in the play-in game.
I mean, the Clippers are cursed. It's simple as that. They've been cursed for longer than I've been alive, to be honest with you. I mean, they had a really good roster with Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan, and Blake Griffin, early 2010s, and they still didn't do anything with that roster. Obviously that's a cop out answer. They're old, they're injury prone. Your star player is Kawhi Leonard, so unless he's 2019 Kawhi with the Raptors, you're gonna
Mhm.
have what seems like a ceiling due to his health with that roster like that. So they haven't
Yeah, and
improved on the youth, and that's been the problem for the last few years.
and I'd say Kawhi Leonard, maybe above any other player in the whole league, is all about load management. And he plays about every other game. So you're right. You can't get any consistency. So I don't know. It's just sad to watch that franchise just languish in purgatory year after year after year. Can never get it done. Let's talk about the trades that happened at the deadline. The first big one was the Cleveland Cavaliers. They acquired James Harden in a major move, and they have put him together with Donovan Mitchell to try to have a championship push. This is a roster that came in number one in the East last year. They also brought in Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis from the Kings, and then they dealt DeAndre Hunter to Sacramento, which I feel really bad for my boy DeAndre. But Cole, what's your thought about this trade? Is this going to make a difference for the Cavs, and can they make some noise?
I mean, so much about this says that they should not be much better. It's just James Harden. He's consistently underperformed in the playoffs year in, year out for the better part of a decade now. But for some reason, I'm going against where I should be, and I'm gonna say I believe in this team. I think James Harden brings a new aspect to this Cavs team that we haven't seen before. The coach over there is a really smart offensive mind. I think he can do stuff with the two bigs, Harden and Donovan Mitchell off the ball. Donovan Mitchell having less of an offensive load and just kind of being a little more of a catch and shoot guy has been really good from the last few games. He's been more efficient in the 3 games that the Clippers have played with James Harden. They're 3-0. Mobley hadn't been playing either. He's coming back today, so I'm excited to see what Harden looks like with Evan Mobley. But it's just
Mhm.
Harden's such a good pick and roll guy. He did a lot of pick and roll stuff with Jared Allen, and Mobley can kind of feed into that a little bit too. So I think there's a lot of pieces around this Cavs team that should lead to playoff success besides James Harden. So I believe in him, but I won't be shocked if they flame out like they probably should.
What do you think, Robbie? Is this going to bring
I
them
don't
back?
I don't think they're gonna go deep in the playoffs. I don't get the sense of that, but I think they're just gonna be a tricky team to play and put up a decent fight. Maybe out in the second round.
I mean, he's an offensive weapon, but he's a defensive liability. I don't know if he gets you very much in the East. In the East, you got to play defense to go to the championship. I don't think he, in my opinion, and we know how he performs in the playoffs. He always flames out. He's always great in the regular season. He's a little Mar Jackson of basketball, and I just look at him as not bringing very much to that roster. So I think they're going to be behind the 8 ball against those top East teams.
I think they get a little better, but not enough to
Maybe a
make
little.
a hard push like they need.
I mean, I'm biased, but I'd rather have DeAndre Hunter. He can both score and play defense. He's one of the best defenders in the East.
He is a very good defender, and that doesn't always show up in the stats. It does
And
some stats, but not all of them.
I will say the fact they also got Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis, they are a little deeper than they were before the deadline. So I will say that. But you put them up against the Celtics or the Pistons, they're gonna have some problems, I think.
I understand the thought behind that. I think, and I understand why you guys are very high on DeAndre Hunter. He's a very fun player, UVA. I get all of that. I think Keon Ellis is a better defender than DeAndre Hunter is.
He
He's
might be.
smaller. He's kind of a
Yeah.
different kind of role, but still will guard your wings, your twos and threes.
Hmm.
And he's going to play much less of an offensive role, so you can play him out there in the playoffs. He'll basically be the three next, or instead of Jalen Tyson, who's starting three right now. He'll
Hmm.
he'll be that defensive guy, and he'll let Donovan Mitchell shoot more shots and let James Harden shoot more shots. Whether you want that or not is a different conversation. We'll see what
Right.
happens in April and May.
I mean,
But I think
are they a
mhm.
championship contender though after this trade? I think there's no question they got a little bit better with the acquisition of these three players. But the question is, are they a championship contender?
I think they have a good chance to make the finals. That's kind of what I was getting at. I feel like I should be too smart to say that, but I think they have a pretty good chance in this weak East this year to make a run. I do believe in
Hmm.
this team. I don't
Maybe.
believe in James Harden, but I believe in what this team could be around James Harden. So I have a little
Mhm.
bit of optimism about it.
We'll see what happens. It's gonna be fun to watch. The next trade is the Pacers. They strengthen their future by acquiring Zubac from the Clippers. Any thoughts about why the Clippers would get rid of him and why the Pacers want him for their looking forward future with Halliburton coming back next year?
I'm not really sure why the Clippers got off of Zubac for as little as they did. I know he'd been a little bit worse this year than when he was last year. He kind of came out of nowhere last year being as good as he was, relatively speaking.
Hmm.
But for the Pacers, they needed somebody that he isn't Miles Turner, but they needed a center that wasn't Jay Huff, somebody better than Jay Huff, and kind of play a role that can do pick and roll stuff with
Hmm.
Nimhard and Halliburton when he's coming back next year. He's going to play
Mhm.
very little this year. I think it's going to be a new look Pacers team, but they're going to be back in the playoffs next year as well.
Hmm.
So I think it'll be
I
fun to
think
watch.
I think Huff's playing pretty well for them though. He's really
He is
kind of made
playing
it.
well. I actually picked him
Yeah,
up in fantasy right before this because they're,
yeah. He's
still
pretty
running out
good.
lineups that aren't playing, too well,
He,
too many great players as of
it's
right
funny.
now.
He's another a Virginia boy, of course, that Rob and I love. And what's funny is when he was in college, he used to drive us crazy because he used to try to take threes all the time. And I know that's because he wanted
Yeah.
to make the NBA, but it drove us nuts because he would never go inside. Well, it's funny now. Watch him play with the Pacers, and he's going inside a lot. He's dunking a lot. He's
Well,
doing a
what I
lot of
like
a
is
lot of
he's
the things that I
he's
wish he would do for the Cavaliers back in the day.
he's getting a lot of blocks, which is nice.
Yeah.
He, he's he's good on the defensive side. He's not a
He's acting like
liability.
a real center, and he didn't at Virginia. He tried to be like a big guard.
When
And
was he at
Yeah.
Virginia? I didn't know he was a Cavalier. What years was that? Do
oh
you
Yeah.
yeah,
remember?
oh yeah.
Uh,
He was there just before the championship run. So it was
well, no,
like
I think he was was he on the bench?
he was on the bench during the championship, but he
Yeah.
was really at his prime the year before the championship. So
No,
2018
year after. Year
was he year
after.
after? Oh,
Year
year after.
after.
Okay. So he
Yeah.
was big 2020, I guess would be
He was a
his peak.
backup in the championship game.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's right.
I'm pretty
That's
sure.
right. Yeah, that is true. So next one is the Dallas Mavericks. There's two trades to talk about here, and you did a really good job, I thought, Cole, on your podcast talking about these two. Their first one was Trae Young going to the Wizards, giving them some hope. This is a franchise that feels like the New Orleans Pelicans of the East. And this is what's funny is this is the franchise we grew up with in Washington, D.C. They used to be called the Bullets, and we were big Bullets fans growing up. And it's so sad to see what's happened to this franchise the last 25 years of just being horrifically bad. And so they bring in Trae Young from Atlanta, who clearly has given up on him. And they bring in, of course, Anthony Davis, who's a NBA champion, and put together this roster kind of looking towards the future. So thoughts about these two trades?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just excited for Washington fans, like you had said. This team needs stuff like this for jersey sales, for fan, exposure, and just happiness as a whole. They have been middling for very long under. Actually, I don't remember what the coach's name was, but they, early 2020s, like I said, they were very bad, just constantly in the lottery, not necessarily getting the high enough picks to make a difference, but not getting, and even when they had high enough picks to make a difference, they would draft people like Johnny Davis and Corey Kispert wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
really go anywhere with those
Mm-hmm.
guys. So they had a good direction and they decided to go sort of all in. They actually didn't give up that much looking back at it, but they raised the ceiling of the team dramatically and they still have their young guys to fall back on. So they're in a really good spot as long as everybody can stay healthy, which is a huge if with Anthony Davis and Trae Young, but it looks really good on paper, you know.
Why do you think the Dallas Mavericks didn't think AD was part of their core? What was the reason behind that?
He's 32. I mean, they need to go in a direction around Cooper Flag. I don't know what they're doing with Kyrie. I mean, that kind of is still on the, the older side, keeping Kyrie around and not Anthony Davis. I'm not entirely sure if they're gonna. I think they just need to go into a new direction. And Anthony Davis is, wiping the slate clean of the Luka trade and Nico Harrison and all that. I think that's probably the big reason why they did everything.
I gotcha. Yeah, you're Robbie.
I'm really excited. I'm really excited for the Alex Sarr effect. Young draft pick that could really get mentored by Anthony Davis. I think that he could really learn a lot, and he's got a long way to go. But
it's true. It's very true. So isn't it funny, Robbie, that 32 is old in the NBA now?
Yeah,
32. That's funny. I'm excited to see.
Start load management at 27.
That's right. Yeah. I'm excited to see this team, see if they can improve going into next year, because obviously I like the Hornets, but they're my second team, the Wizards. So next one is the Golden State Warriors. They send Kuminga off and trade him with Buddy Hield to the Hawks for Porzingis. And it's really interesting to see these two teams really trying to shuffle the deck and try to put two new rosters together. So, Cole, your take on this trade?
Yeah, this trade has not quite been how I thought it was going to be at first reaction, because I like Buddy Hield a lot in Atlanta. He played one game, played 5 minutes. So I don't know if he's going to – they got a lot of guards over there. It's kind of a logjam, the guard position, and guard, wing, forward, like small forward position. So I don't know if Buddy's going to get a role like I hoped he would when I first heard the news. And that goes with Jonathan Kuminga as well. I'm so glad that he is out of that system and out of the Warriors. That's what everybody's been complaining about, myself included, that they treated him as an asset so poorly. Between the front office thinking he's too valuable to be traded and he should be playing, and Steve Kerr thinking that, he is also valuable but he's not playing, it doesn't work together. And it was really frustrating watching him for years and years. I just don't know if they're going to play either of them for the Hawks, and the Hawks need them. And Kristaps is something else too. He's going through an illness that I cannot pronounce, but it's like a nervous system thing that's really, really dangerous. And he's not going to be the same player either, I don't think, as he was even last year with the Celtics.
So who do you think won this trade then?
I think the Hawks should win this trade on paper, but if they don't play those guys, I mean, nobody really won at the end of the day. I think the Warriors lost this trade because they didn't get anything for Kuminga. Nothing, relatively speaking, just getting KP back. I don't know. If the Hawks don't play their guys, the Hawks don't win. I don't see a world where the Warriors win this trade either, especially with the direction they were heading, like you guys had talked about. I don't. This trade needed to happen, but it's not really great for either side, I don't think.
It's just interesting that the Golden State Warriors had those couple championships, won a couple rings. They had that peak period. And then afterwards, every one of their draft picks that we thought had so much promise, they've ended up giving up on after about 2 seasons. So I wonder what it is about that, about Kuminga, about Buddy Hield. They had a couple guys that were real promising, and they seemed to have given up on them and moved on. So what do you think, Robbie? Who do you think won this trade?
I don't know. Probably the Hawks. I think they might be able to. They have the potential to make this work.
Yeah, and I think they're the Hawks are very guard heavy, like you said, Cole. But that's one reason they felt like they could send Trae Young to the Wizards, right? Because they're really deep at guard.
Does it feel like to you guys that most of the teams that were active didn't do a lot that explain anything this year, but with this heavy draft coming?
Yes.
It feels like they're making moves to set up what they're going to do in the draft.
It feels really strange because this trade deadline felt very much about 2027. I agree with Cole.
So not all these moves made sense in the context of what did it do to their team right now. But they may be in a position where they're trying to get depth so they can dump a contract, so they can make room for, I'm not sure. Every team probably has their own explanation, but I'm sure that it has to do with their eye on who they want in the draft coming up.
100%. Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens, but I think the Hawks won this one for sure. I think Porzingis will be a bit player, but he isn't going to bring the kind of reshaping of the roster that the Golden State Warriors want. So some other ones, you have this big one, and Cole, you did a great job on your podcast again talking about this one, and we've touched on it a little bit already around Jackson going to the Jazz in this player trade, which was very complex with Walter Clayton Jr. involved and Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, Conchar and Landale and all these different guys.
And 3 first-round picks.
Yeah. What do you think shook out Cole coming out of this one? Who do you think got better, Utah or the Memphis Grizzlies?
Well, after getting over the fact that a team that was 20 games under 500 decided to buy at the deadline, I was happy that the Jazz made this move. I'm also happy that the Grizzlies decided to be, proactive and get rid of Jaren while he had a, high value. Because that's the reason they gave rid of Ja Morant, was because nobody wanted him for the price that they wanted. I think the Miami Heat, it's a rumor, so don't take this as, gospel or anything, but I think Pat Riley wanted a first round pick from the Grizzlies on top of Ja Morant to take on his contracts. So there was just no value at all, no market for Ja Morant that the Grizzlies were wanting. Jaren Jackson Jr. had a market, and they did what they're supposed to do. So now they're going to get a chance at a high pick this year. Ja Morant won't play much this year. Maybe, they'll get a good 2 or 3 to put next to Ja, and they can either rebuild or retool however they want to. And they got picks, like Robin said. I'm really excited about a couple of those picks, especially the Suns 2031, I think is what it is. That should be a really interesting pick down the road.
What's interesting is that the Memphis Grizzlies wanted 2 first-round picks for Ja, and they just weren't going to get that with that big contract. So that's why it didn't end up working out. So who do you think won this trade?
I would say I think both teams won the trade. If I had to pick a team, I would say the Jazz, because I believe Jaren Jackson Jr. next to Laurie, next to potentially Walker Kessler as well, could be really good in a couple years. They got Jaren signed for another 4 years. So it is very dependent on how good this Jazz team is, until 2030, 2031. But I think I like their future a lot. So I'm leaning towards the Jazz. But both teams did good. Happy that this trade happened, looking back at it.
Yeah, I
I
agree with
think
you.
Memphis did well getting those picks, man.
Getting
I
the
mean,
picks and getting Walter Clayton Jr., who I really like. I think
yeah,
he's a really
he's a
good player.
good player. And Jaren Jackson, that hurts, but I mean, this this is a good draft coming up. We got a lot of good players coming out in the next few years. They're gonna have they're gonna be on the upswing over the next 4 years.
It's true. It's very true. So this was the most curious trade for me at the deadline of all of them, just like you said, Cole, because of why are either of these teams in the trade business right now in terms of buying. So I'm still kind of scratching my head about it, especially with the also the tanking issue. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to reevaluate this in 27 and 28, see which of these teams came out on top. So next one we got is 76ers send Eric Gordon to the Grizzlies. Any take on that one?
Not really. I mean, there was a few nothing trades where people just swap second round picks like this to get off of a contract. They made this trade to sign Quentin Grimes to a larger, maybe $20-ish million deal, because they said they got a bunch of good guards over there. And Eric Gordon didn't really get any playing time. He's pretty old. That's all this was. It's just to get Quentin Grimes. And they also wanted to get Dominique Barlow onto off a two-way and sign him for the playoffs, which I'm pretty excited about too. You'll see him in the playoffs for the Sixers. He's a good power forward too. But it's kind of a nothing deal for the most part.
It's interesting that the NBA has this issue, Robbie, and because we talk about all the NFL trades, but the NBA is much more sensitive to contracts and either getting rid of contracts or buying contracts. You don't really see that in the NFL very much. I mean, they worry about the NFL salary cap, but mainly they're trading for somebody they think can improve their team, or if they want to get picks back, they're not worried about their contract as much. So, yeah, I agree with this is kind of a nothing trade just to get rid of some contracts and make some room. This one is the Celtics move Bouchard, Tillman, and Minot to dodge the luxury tax. And they traded to 3 different teams. Any thoughts about this move?
I think Josh Minot is a really good player for the most part. Kind of a low ceiling guy, but I think he's good. He is not playing for the Nets, I guess, because he's 23 years old and they're playing guys that are 20. I mean, they drafted 5 guys last year. But I think he's a good player. I think he needs to go to contender, not a Brooklyn Nets team. Everybody else is just guys that won't play. Boucher's not going to play. Tillman's not going to play. Another kind of
Mhm.
nothing trade for the most part.
Yeah, actually, they've already assigned Tillman down to the G League. So, but he's another depth guy. I guess you can try to develop him.
It could be a depth thing that
Yeah,
over time will pay dividends.
I think
And if
so.
it doesn't, then you didn't risk anything and didn't.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I like the
Again,
Hornets are building depth.
I like that too. Yeah. And again, the Celtics feel like they're trying to win now, so they're trying to make sure they get under that tax, don't get penalized. Nuggets trade Hunter Tyson to the Nets for picks. Think there's any impact here?
This is even worse than the Sixers trade. Hunter Tyson wasn't very good. I'm not sure who they're trying to use a roster spot for. My guess is they're going to buy somebody out, but the buyout market is never really that good either. I don't really care about this trade, to be honest with you.
It was kind of a weird trade though, because we're at the deadline and the Nuggets are right in the thick of things in the playoffs, and I don't know. It just felt a little strange.
Why are the Nets so active?
Yeah. Yeah, a little,
Weird.
little strange. Nuggets picking up some picks for next year. That's okay, but I didn't understand this one. Why you'd be freeing up a roster spot this late in the season, unless they have somebody in mind. So
Mm.
interesting. Jones and Branham get traded. So the Hornets get Branham and the Mavericks got Tyus Jones, who's another guy on their roster. Hornets are pretty deep at that position right now. Is there any impact here, do you think, for the Hornets run?
No, the Hornets already waived Malachi Branham pretty much immediately after as well. I mean, there's a bunch of these where it's just getting guys off the contracts, just getting under
Hmm.
luxury tax, getting under the first and second apron, like you guys have said. Tyus
Hmm.
Jones was terrible for the Magic. He's actually been one of the worst NBA players that gets pretty solid minutes. He's
Hmm.
playing for the Mavericks now, so he's just gonna, feed into them losing games at this point. Really not much impact on the NBA here either.
You're not
Yeah,
a fan. You
he's
don't
not
have a Tyus
of either
Jones
one.
jersey in your closet?
So then we have the Bucks, Suns, Bulls agree to a 5-player deal. This was kind of interesting that Dean got traded. I thought he was a really solid part of that original roster. Hayes Davis, Cole Anthony, Amir Coffey, and Nick Richards all got swapped teams. So any thoughts about this one?
The only thing I want to say is that Ousmane Dieng is a good player. He's
He
he's
is.
played 3 games for the Bucks. Last
Yep.
2 games he put up 17 and 19. Now obviously they're also losing on purpose. No Giannis, so they're running out kind of weird rosters as well. But he's good. He's kind of a two-way guy, and I think he's gonna impact winning either if the Bucks retool or go into a contender in the next few years. He's gonna be a
Mhm.
player. He's gonna be a good
Yeah.
guy.
I was really surprised they shipped him because I felt like he was a really good, whether a starter or solid 6th or 7th man backup. So that was a surprise. I thought that was a good acquisition by the Bucks. Any thoughts here, Robbie?
I think Dang is a great player. I don't know why you'd move him, but I don't have a lot of thoughts on this one.
And Cole
I think
Anthony,
this is more contract related.
it surprised me. Cole Anthony's on the move again. I mean, it just seems like he had so much promise coming into the NBA, and he's kind of becoming somewhat of a journeyman at a pretty young age.
He is. Yeah.
So I don't quite understand what's happened to his career. So next one, we got Pelicans send Jose Alvarado to the Knicks for 2 second-round picks and cash. So again, the Pelicans continue their fire sale. Do you think Alvarado provides some depth for the Knicks?
I do. This is actually one of the trades that I talked about on my podcast. First off, about Cole Anthony, I had a thought just now is that he is an archetype of players that aren't doing much in the NBA anymore. Think about Cam Thomas with the
Mm-hmm.
Nets, how he was putting up points, but nobody really wanted him. They actually had to waive him or buy him out because he didn't have market for anything. I think he's actually, ironically enough, on the Bucks now. But yeah, Cole Anthony's just one of those players that doesn't really play defense, takes weird shots, a lot of mid ranges, which is looked down upon in the NBA today. It's
Mm-hmm.
just not a player that is going to do much for teams, and he will be a journeyman, like you said. That was a good point. I like
Mm-hmm.
Jose Alvarado on the Knicks. I think he's not going to get a
Yeah.
ton of run time, but Dalen Terry is also one of those really poor NBA players. He won't be in the league
Mm-hmm.
in 2 years.
I
I didn't
agree.
like him on the Bulls. I thought he may do something, and he just didn't. I think Jose should come in from time to time in the playoffs and guard players like, Donovan Mitchell if they play the Cavs. I think he could give Donovan Mitchell really tough time and just be a spark off the bench defensively and swing momentum of a game or a couple games in the playoffs,
Mhm.
which I'm excited to see personally.
You want to have depth going into this time of year anyway. Got 30 games left, so it's good to have a guy like him. And Dalen Terry, I agree, he won't be in the league. And it's interesting to me that the Pelicans are fire selling almost every asset they have, and they're bringing in guys they know they're going to release in the offseason, which means they're not just in a rebuild; they're in a complete blow it up completely and keep two players. So it's going to be interesting. Lakers add shooting and they get Kennard from the Hawks. So again, the Hawks continue to let go some of these original pieces they had on some of their playoff run teams. You think this helps the Lakers?
I do. I think it helps the Lakers more on paper than in reality. Luke Kennard is a really fun player in the sense that he is much better on paper as well, and in people's heads than he actually is. The reason he's so efficient is because he doesn't take shots. He should shoot more than he does, as good of a three-point shooter as he is. And Lakers fans are gonna be really upset about that come playoff time. They're gonna be calling for him to take more shots. So if he can get shots, and if JJ Redick can get to this guy's head and say you need to shoot shots, we need catch and shoot guys around Luka in the playoffs, then he could be really good for him. And Gabe Vincent wasn't all that good for the Lakers either. I just think this is not as big of a deal as some people think it may be, but I could be wrong.
I think you're right. I think Luke Kennard is for their playoff run. That's why they brought him in for an extra shooter. We'll see what happens. Wolves land Dasunmu from the Bulls, and they ship Rob Dillingham and Leonard Miller. Any thoughts about this? This seems like the Wolves are trying to improve right before playoffs begin.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I think this was probably one of my favorite trades. I was really hoping that the Timberwolves would get a point guard because they had Mike Conley that's 37 years old. He was shooting, I think, 35 from the field and 30 from three. And he's, slow on defense because he's so old. It's just not a good look over there. They have Dante DiVincenzo, and he's pretty good, but he's not a true point guard, just kind of a combo who can kind of play point a little bit. So Io is a true point guard, was doing really good for the Bulls. I'm really happy they got him. Like I said, this is why I'm high on this team. I'm really curious what it looks like come playoff time. And the Bulls get to take a flyer on somebody like Rob Dillingham, who was, the eighth overall pick. I think it was last year, if not a year
Yep.
before that.
Yep.
So I think it's interesting. The Bulls have too many guards. I mean, they got to sort that out here pretty soon. A few of them are on one-year deals. They got Colin Sexton and Anthony Simons on one-year deals. So hopefully
Mhm.
one of those guys probably walks or they sign and trade him somewhere else. But I think it's getting what you need for the Bulls, which they didn't do a ton of at this deadline, and the Timberwolves get somebody that they desperately need, which I'm really excited for.
Do you think the Hornets got the better guard in getting Kobe White over Colin Sexton?
I
As
do.
always,
I like Colin Sexton. He was actually really efficient. I think I saw he was shooting 48% from the field, which is amazing. I mean, he's like a 6'2",
which is
6'3"
why I
guard
didn't
shooting
want him to
double
go. I
percentage.
was really sad that happened for the Hornets. I
I
wanted
know.
that. Yeah,
I
but
like Colin Sexton a lot too, but they're very similar players. And Kobe White is going to have a higher usage and take away more of the defense. So it should,
it's
in
true.
theory, get better looks. He's also a better facilitator than Colin Sexton is. So it should
That
get
is
better
true.
looks for
That is
guys
true.
like Brandon Miller, Josh Green, 3 and Ds off the bench, some of the other young rookies as well. So I think it's better for the Hornets, but I'm a little worried about it ruining chemistry in the short term.
You know what's interesting about this trade that happened first time ever in history in the NBA? 4 second-round picks in one trade.
That was going to be my point. Is
Isn't that wild, Robbie?
I think both teams won here. I really like Ao as a player, and
Yeah.
I think that Dillingham has potential, and the
Yep.
4 second round picks are quite a nice future piece. So I think both teams. This was one of my favorite trades, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think both teams improved for sure. So Warriors trade Trace Jackson Davis to the Raptors for picks. What was your thinking around this one, Cole?
My thought was that I wanted to get a better center. Frankly, I wanted to get off Jakob contract. He's already one of the worst contracts in the NBA, and it's going to be even worse in 3 years when he's in his mid 30s and can barely play basketball because he's got an injury history. So I wanted somebody better than Trace Jackson Davis, but looking into that guy a little bit more, he is a fun player. He's a small center. He's a 6'9" guy, so he doesn't really play. He's not going to do a ton as far as centers for us, but he plays really hard. He's a good defender. kind of does stuff similar to what Jakob Poeltl does, and he played really well in the one game we had before the deadline. I think he had like 4 or 5 offensive rebounds. So I'm optimistic about it, but it's really just kind of around the edges, getting a
Yeah.
slightly better center core, not
Not a major impact, but a better defender probably. Yeah. He can contribute. That was my feeling too, is that he was just going to be a role player. Chris Paul goes to Toronto.
When I read about that trade, it didn't move the needle at all for me.
Yeah.
That's, you know.
So the other big trade Toronto made was to go get Chris Paul in his last season. Obviously, that's going to be the end of his contract because he is going to be retiring at the end of the year. And then this is a 3-team deal. You got the Nets get Agbaji, and then the Clippers got draft rights to Vanja Markovic when he does end up coming into the NBA draft, which he has not declared yet. Thoughts about this trade?
Yeah, I actually wanted Chris Paul on the Raptors. Funny enough, I thought he was going to increase the winning, kind of like just a veteran leadership and winning culture to us, which is kind of ironic because the Clippers got rid of him because he was hurting their winning culture, and then they started winning the second that they got rid of him. But he never reported a training camp. Our GM actually said in an interview Chris Paul was one of his favorite players ever, but they said just don't come. We don't really want you here, and you don't really want to be here. I didn't want to get rid of Ochai. I think he was a pretty good player. He was shooting very poor from 3, which he was good last year, so that hurts. But good defender. He was really good at Kansas years ago, if you guys remember that. But yeah, they just need to get rid of him to get under luxury tax. I don't care much for that as the Raptors fan. I don't care about billionaires saving $3 million in luxury tax. That's not really my problem, I guess. But if it had to be done, it had to be done. So it's neither here nor there, I guess.
So is Chris going to get some playing time, do you think?
No. He's not showing up at all. I think he's either like retired already or said he was going to retire. He's not going to play anywhere.
Okay.
I think you've seen your last Chris Paul game.
I think you're probably right. Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting move by them just to get under the tax. So this is a big one that obviously affects the Bulls and the Hornets and the Thunder. Bulls ship White and Conley to the Hornets for Sexton, Dieng, and picks. So who do you think got the better of this one?
We had talked about this already. I think the Hornets, if Kobe White pans out and doesn't ruin any of the chemistry, I think the Hornets get the best out of this because Colin Sexton was a restricted free agent. Like you said, he was going to have to get paid a little more than what he was now, and the Hornets didn't want to do that. I understand that. Mike Conley is, funny enough, he's back on the Timberwolves. So it's a weird rule about if you get traded twice, you can actually go back to the team that waived you, even a week ago, right? Which is kind of funny. I didn't know that was in place.
Yeah, NFL has a similar rule. Yep. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, too many guards for the Bulls. Hope Kobe White works out for the Hornets. And I didn't realize Mason Plumlee was still in the league. I mean, that's what I feel about this trade for the most part.
That's right. We'll see what happens with that trade. I'm excited and tentative about Kobe White because Colin Sexton was playing so well, but we'll see how that turns out. So let's talk about the All-Star game. Were we able to save the format? And we already teased it a little bit at the beginning of the program, but did the USA World format revive the NBA struggling All-Star game? So let me start with Robbie on this one.
I think it was a little better. I liked that the players showed up and wanted to play it and wanted to put in the effort to look pretty good out there. I'm not sure. I like East versus West better, but I don't have a big problem with US versus the world.
Did it surprise you that Wemby led the chance to let's play defense, let's try, guys, let's try to win this game? Did it surprise you that he was the leader around that?
Not at all. I like Wemby's attitude. I like how he has a competitiveness. So, he takes it seriously.
We've talked a little bit about some of the other things they could do to, revive the All-Star game. Critics say that once the showpiece for the league has turned into a glorified practice session. So that's kind of the, criticism that has come, but there were signs that this updated version might have worked. Team USA wins the NBA All-Star game as the new format revised lagging event. So you can see these are all the headlines that people are saying that the game was a little bit better. Winners and losers with Wemby and Anthony Davis winning big in the game, coming out as kind of the winners of both of their sides. And then in terms of actual fixing the game, some other changes they could make, return to classics or 1v1. You could have readopt the ELOM ending, which ensures the game ends on a made basket, promoting a more competitive finish. You could have higher stakes, punishments for losing, or like we talked about, maybe giving the game 7 in the finals to the winner. And then some ideas around fixing the slam dunk contest. Star power have to be there. You have to essentially negotiate with the stars that several of them are there and participate. And then tailor the contest with better storylines and make it more entertaining, kind of like a WWE style theatrics. So what do you think, Cole, some of these changes about maybe trying to revive this once great event?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about a lot of what I had to say about the All-Star game earlier, whereas just I believe that the All-Star game, the product has gotten really bad over the last few years, and I was optimistic about this year, and actually my expectations were actually blown, not blown away, but I was happy to have how much better this game was, more than I expected I was going to be. So I was really happy, really satisfied with this. Honestly, some people aren't, but the bar has gotten so low in the last few years that this is a major step up. I just think it's stuff we need to fix. If people start caring about the game, a lot of stuff will kind of lay out where it needs to. But I think there's a bunch of other stuff they need to work on too. Dunk contests, like you guys said, I think is probably the biggest problem now.
I agree.
And they did something. I didn't even watch this. I don't. It may have been. It was either. I think it was Saturday before the dunk contest and all that. Maybe that was Friday. It was something called Shooting Stars, which
Yes.
replaced the what's the fundamentals off. What was the I can't even remember what it's called. You know what I'm
I
talking about?
don't
They
know what
did
it's
the
called
dribbling and
either.
the passes. Yeah, skills
Yes.
challenge.
Yeah, the skills challenge.
We never really needed a skills challenge in the first place. These are NBA players. I don't know why they're seeing who can do fundamentals the best. I thought that was a little bit goofy, just kind of in concepts. Dunk contest needs to get stars. We talked about that before. We need a one-on-one tournament. It's simple as that. Everybody's been asking for it for a couple years now, and now it's really gotten higher. It's just,
It
stop
would be
trying to tap
awesome.
dance around it. Do a
It would
one-on-one
be
like
awesome.
everybody wants to see.
Yep, I agree. It'd be awesome. I will say I'm with you, Cole. Watching this event, I was pleasantly surprised at how competitive it was, how much defense they were playing. They were actually trying to rebound, box each other out. They were actually trying to win the game, which was a difference compared to the last couple of years. So that was
I think
good.
I think one-on-one tournament, but no 3-point line.
Yeah, 1-on-1, no 3-point line. I like that.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. I think that the 3-point contest, it was still okay. I watched it too. I would prefer to have a little bit more of the 3-point stars in there, although Concanupa was there and that was cool to see. But the right now, after this year's game, I feel like the dunk contest is still the one that's lagging behind. It needs the most fixing because it's
Yeah,
just not the same
that
event.
was Lillard's third time winning, so he's
Yeah,
definitely a sharpshooter.
he is.
Um,
Any
I
other
think three point was decent.
any other thoughts about fixing the All-Star game?
In general, put more on it on the events and bring stars in and make it count more, and you'll have more exciting competition,
You
whatever that
talking
looks like.
more money, more penalties,
More
more?
money, more things that you win. Maybe a big incentive for the winner, and very tiny incentive if you lose.
Mhm.
Um, just put as much into it as you can because this is your showcase. You want to grab new fans, and this tends to do that when it's exciting.
Mhm.
When people say, "Hey, you got to watch it," but they're not doing that for,
It's true.
events that don't matter.
100%.
That's why they're looking for all these changes, is that it hasn't been good.
It
So,
feels like they brought it about halfway back. It's not quite there yet, but I'm hoping next year they continue this momentum because it was better. Um, so let's talk about our final topic for tonight, and that is how to improve the NBA game in general. The first idea is to eliminate the corner three. You can see a diagram there to the right of what it would look like if you got rid of the corner three. That's the 3-point line in the European game. They've already gotten rid of the corner three for that reason. Essentially reduces the reliance on that stationary high value shot that's very easy to make. You could also, this is the one I've been proposing for 2 years, and I didn't think anybody else was thinking along these lines, but apparently they are. And that's having a limit on the total made 3-pointers per team. So essentially, maybe 20 is your max. If you make 20 3-pointers, you can't shoot any more the whole game, something like that. or maybe even give them the number of 3-point shots you can make or the number of 3-point attempts you can make, one or the other. Another one would be to speed up play, start games exactly on time, reduce timeout lengths, shorten breaks, have fewer commercial breaks, that kind of thing. Might make it a little more exciting for the fan, both on the TV and at the game. And then stricter officiating. They've gotten too loose on the rules. They don't call travels anymore. They don't call carrying anymore. They allow hand checking. There's just a lot of different aspects of the game they
Yeah.
could
Well, when's the
change.
last time you saw a travel called in the NBA?
There are a couple, to be honest with you. It's not as I think it may be a little bit overblown, but yeah, I think there just needs to be a
I
consistent
haven't
rule of
seen it.
what a travel is, because there's too many
Yeah.
things that go away from like what an actual travel is, and it needs to be called more consistent, like you
Well,
guys.
but it's whether a travel is, but it's also, it's all about officiating. They don't have to call it. They can call it or not call it. It's just like the NFL. There's a hold on every single play in the NFL, but they usually don't call it. So, so
Well, that
it
that's
just
why I
it
don't
feels like they've de-emphasized calling a lot of the plays they used to in the old days.
I don't want them to call carries, at least not the ones that aren't like I want carries to be called like holding, where it's like if you pick up the ball like this and then you carry, you can call that. But there's a carry on every two crossovers in the NBA. You don't want that to be called every time. Just like you don't
Yeah.
want every holding
True.
to be called.
Do you
Yeah,
guys
no,
like
that's right.
you like the limit on the 3-point attempts?
I I hadn't actually real well, the limits is interesting. I think there's just nowhere where that happens because I think it would ruin too much and it would, change history and it would make, kind of put asterisk by certain numbers going forward as far as like all-time players and, eras defining stuff like that. I want to talk about the eliminating the corner three though. I didn't realize that Europe had done that already. Have you guys,
They've
Yeah.
already done it.
what does
Yeah,
the
they already done
spacing
it.
look like in Europe? Have you guys seen that by chance? Like, is people still play in the corner, but they're just
Yeah,
below the 3-point line? Or are they, around the three still, but they're just instead of being in the corner, they're on the wing? How does
they
that work?
they still play in the corner, but what they end up doing is they end up driving the baseline a lot more than they would in
Yeah.
the NBA
They're
because
they're trying for a closer shot.
yeah, yep. So what they're trying to do is, and people who are old school people, you may not feel this way, Cole, but people like Rob and I who remember the old days of the glory days of NBA when every shot wasn't a 3-pointer, even by a 7-footer. Um, what would happen back then was, they actually ran plays. They had X's and O plays, kind of like the NFL, and you would actually try to work the ball inside as close as possible and get the best shot you could. This was
And the stars on
before
the stars
before
on the
analytics.
team,
Yeah.
the stars on the team were the 4 and the 5. And occasionally you had a Michael Jordan, but you know, there was a lot of interior play. It really mattered. And they weren't just in there for rebounding and picks. And it was a different game.
And
I'd like
the
to see
X's,
some of it brought back.
you'd have a guy, one of the major coaches pull the team over to the side and actually draw up a play on the board and then actually run it. And those are the days X's and O's actually matter. Today it's all ISO, 4 guys on one side, one guy on the other against his defender, trying to find a way to get off a 3-pointer. And those of us who are old school, we just don't think that's as exciting a game anymore. So
Yeah.
we'll see what the debate is.
I do think the mid-range jumpers made a little bit of a comeback.
With
So
SGA,
that
yes.
yeah, that's nice. I like seeing my favorite thing to see is NBA players do things that I cannot do. And I can hit a mid-range jumper and I can hit a three sometimes. And so I want to see somebody reverse jam it over two defenders.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to see guys fly from the free throw line and a lot of interior play centers that are doing sky
I
hooks
mean,
and
really, we can point to one player who changed the game. That was Steph Curry. I mean, he made the 3-pointer so easy, and he completely changed the game. He made the Golden State Warriors completely dominant for about 5 years because of it. And everyone copied him. And because of analytics, now everyone shoots the three. Yeah. So, Cole, your thought is you like the 3-pointer the way it is today?
I I'm not for the most part I wouldn't want to change it, but I do like the idea of eliminating the corner three. I want to watch tape on that and see what the spacing looks like and how it changes how offenses are made because I really do think I don't hate the corner three, but it is the most it is the easiest shot, and you get the most points per shot in corners. That's why you have people that are
Yeah.
just their entire role is to sit there and shoot it, and that's boring. That's bad for the product. I'm fully aware, and I agree with that 100%. So I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
interesting. I like the idea of that in theory, but without, but I gotta look at it myself.
And and there's a whole nother aspect we haven't talked about, and that's um, having to guard the perimeter for tall guys and
Hmm.
fours and fives. They have to get out there and close
Hmm.
out. And there's a lot more little leg injuries from having to lunge more, as opposed to bruising, posting up, just mauling in there. There were injuries that way, but it seemed like there weren't as many Achilles and um, calf injury. Like it seemed like, I don't know, playing defense when everything is at the 3-point line, closing out is tougher
And I agree with
and
Rob. I agree with
and
Rob. It is.
causes injuries.
I agree with you, Rob. It's more visually pleasing to me. That's just me personally. That to see somebody, drive down the lane and jam it down and do something I can't do versus a guy who sits in the corner and just shoots threes all day. So I think that's what we're talking about here is limiting 3-point attempts and then eliminating the corner three. I think those two things would force these teams to call plays, run plays, and try to work the ball inside as much as possible. So
So I wanted to ask, or I want a couple of things about this too. First off, starting the games on time, no 15-minute delay is something that I've been asking for a long time, especially the games that are starting at 10:30 and don't get kicked
yep,
off until 10:45, 10:43,
yep.
10:50. I don't like that. I think VAR is a cool idea. I think we need to talk more about that. Not us, but just as a whole, like the NBA fans, that should be a concept that people are thinking about. And then I wanted to ask you, Tom, about the limiting of the three-point attempts. So after you hit 15 or 20, whatever you want to set the number to as far as makes goes.
Well, it's whether you
Are
do
we supposed
attempts or
to
shots
do
made. Maybe
what?
it's you can talk about attempts or you can talk about shots made. I would say attempts. Let's say you get 43-point attempts in a game, and if you use them all up by the end of the third quarter, you're in a bad spot because you can't shoot any in the fourth, that kind of thing. So it makes them much more strategic, thinking to themselves as coaches, okay, when do we want our 3-point shooters and masters to shoot the three? We want them to save them for the second half, or what do we want to do? So
That's
that's,
really fun. That'll never
that's the idea.
happen. It's borderline game breaking for what the NBA is today,
I
but
don't
that
think
is a
it'll
really
happen, but I
fun
think it's a
idea.
really good idea, and I think it would make the game more visually pleasing and
You
more
know what would
This is
be
very
cool?
strategic,
yeah,
like you
yeah,
said.
strategic.
You know what would be cool? I heard somebody propose that every home floor has a different set of rules. So like you can have a different 3-point line, you can have no 3-point line, you can have, and that goes along with baseball. Um,
Yeah, that's
like
true.
different dimensions
You could do
and
that
different
too.
and everyone knows where you're playing and what
So
the
when you
rules
go
are
play
in
at Golden
on
State,
that
you
floor.
have the really easy 3-point line.
Yeah. I think it'd be really cool because what would happen is you would see what the best courts are and what the best setup
Yeah,
is and what the most exciting games are. And then more teams could copy that.
that's
I
right.
think it would be a
That's right.
cool experiment.
So, guys, drop us a comment tonight if you're watching tonight and tell us, do you think the corner three should be eliminated? And do you think there should be a limit on the 3-point attempts? Just let us know.
And by the way, some of the teams that have talked about it would put in a 4-point spot.
Yeah, they would.
So I mean,
Like,
every home floor has different rules, and it's gradual. There's certain areas they're allowed to set their own rules, kind of thing.
that would be interesting.
So it would add so much more strategy, you know.
Yeah.
You'd have to carry different players on your roster to play in different parts of your division and stuff like that. So
Some other improvement ideas: win requirement for the lottery. You talked about this, Cole, a little bit, but teams have to win at least 27 games to get top lottery odds. So even if they won the ping pong ball lottery, they could not get that number one pick if they had, let's say, 21 wins or 23 wins. So have some kind of lower cap for teams to actually be in the lottery for the top couple picks. So that's one idea for tanking. And then consider eliminating draft pick protections to make rebuilding through trading rather than losing less appealing. So these are two ways to try to prevent tanking as much. Any thoughts there?
I mean, I touched this before. There's a bunch of solutions. I don't know that I've heard any of them that wouldn't change everything too much for me personally, but I think it's okay to want temporary solutions. Solutions that are better, so you find something that is more permanent or something that'll make it a little better, and you can improve on those temporary solutions and kind of innovate those. I don't really care much for these right now, but I know something needs to change. So I'm okay, I'm willing to admit that, something we need to do something that isn't this, but I don't know what the solution is yet. I'm not in love with all
I'm
of what I've heard so far.
I'm telling you
Robbie.
right now, if you had an 18 playoff to see who gets the first round pick,
Hmm.
people would watch it and they would watch the worst teams in the league and they would start to develop an affinity for their players, the couple good players on the bad teams. And then they would get the draft pick and then it would create more competitiveness and it would get rid of tanking. You wouldn't
What
tank anymore once you
I
got
agree.
into that tournament.
It's a great idea. It's a good idea. I don't think it would happen, but it's a great idea. But Robbie, what do you think of these two very simple changes they could do right now that could prevent tanking, or at least somewhat?
Well, I would do the tournament and I might look at flattening the ability to if you're the worst team, you get so many shots at the ping pong balls.
Hmm.
Maybe flatten it and just have tiers. You're either in the
What
top
about having
tier,
a
middle
27
tier.
game? What about having a 27 game limit where you have to have that many wins to even get into the lottery? So,
Well, I think if you've lost that many games, you probably are a bad team. You're not just tanking, but you have a lot of talent. Um, so I don't know. I maybe try it. Try and
yeah,
see if that works.
yeah, I think all
They
these.
got to do something different than what they're doing now.
I
That's
think so
that's pretty
too.
much all.
I think so too. So another thing is call traveling again. You, Cole, were saying that that's definitely a problem, or at least I think it is. Traveling is an issue in the NBA, and they don't call it very often. They do eventually call it, but it has to be pretty flagrant.
There
The
have been some
care,
outrageous. I don't necessarily want to see carries called, but
yeah,
I do want to see travel. I don't want to see LeBron take off from half court 17 steps and dunk it, and they're fine with it. Like that.
all
That's not
we
good.
talked about the carries, but traveling again and the carries, what they've done is they've essentially made it so advantageous to be the offensive player because they want higher scoring. And that's why they're not calling any of these things. But if you can just call it the way basketball was meant to be called, the original rules, just call it and let the chips fall where they may. That's the idea there.
I
Hand
agree
check
with Cole. I agree with Cole on not calling carries because I like crossovers.
and then
But
hand
there's no
checking.
reason. There's no reason why LeBron should take 7 steps to go dunk it.
Yeah, that's true. That's very
You
true.
know.
And then there's hand checking, which in the old days, of course, they used to basically be able to mug you, which I don't want that.
Yeah.
That was not a pleasant product to look at. But the hand checking now, you get ticky tack fouls in the fourth quarter over and over and over. When they got all the guy's doing is put his hand in the middle of the guy's back. He's not really fouling him. So, what are you guys' thoughts about these three?
I mean, it's what we said before. They need to define rules for traveling. They need to call them much more than they are. Again, unless the carries are overly egregious, then I don't think you need to call really any carries. I said
I
it's
agree.
similar to it's kind of what the holding was. I said that before, and I think
Hmm.
hand checking is something that really needs to get brought back. I'm not sure why that hasn't been talked about as much as other
Yeah.
ideas have as far as officiating. I think
Hmm.
hand checking is a really good thing to have. I think it they made the game so offensive, right? They wanted the product to be so offensive, and now
Right.
it's here, and it's too much.
You
And I
can't play
think a really
defense.
easy fix, just to
Yeah.
bring it from 13 to 10 or 13 to 8, is hand checking. I mean,
Yeah.
really.
That's right. The NFL is dealing with this same problem as they've gone so far in the direction of wanting the NFL to score, 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 that they've made it almost impossible to play defense in the NFL these days without creating some kind of penalty. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, it's the same issue, and they've gone too far, and now they need to figure out how to get it to a balance. So,
I think they need to look at all the ways you can be physical, bring back as much of it as you can without being the Pistons
yeah,
throwing players into the third row. Like
right.
find a
So,
way to let them bang in there, you know? and take a hard look at all the different ways you can be physical and bring back as many as you can without egregious fouling. That we don't want it to hurt offense too much,
That's right.
but it needs to be a physical game.
So the final idea about improving, and Rob, you and I talk about this all the time, players play unless they are hurt. Load management is killing the game, and that players should lose game checks if they sit out uninjured. What's the thought about that? I mean, you have people that are paying more and more and more for a ticket for their family to go see a game, and then they go and 2/3 of the players that they wanted to go see are sitting down because it's load management. They're playing a crappy team.
I think this is not as easy as some people think it is because I think more of load management than what people realize is the medical staff saying you can play on this, but we don't want you to because we think you're going to hurt yourself and be out for 4 months, and they don't have a say in that. I think that happens way more than people realize, and I think people blame the players for it when it isn't the players' decision a lot of the time. So I want to put that out there first. That being said, I think there's no reason that players shouldn't get, take a check out of the game if they don't play. I don't. People don't show up to their jobs. They don't. You get fired if you don't show up to your job a few times
Do you
for no
know?
reason,
Do you know how many
right?
games Kawhi Leonard has averaged the last 3 seasons? Do you know how many games? 36. You know what I mean? And so all the Clippers fans who love Kawhi Leonard want to go see him play. I mean, half the time you go and buy a ticket and go sit there, he's in street clothes. So it's a problem. What do
Yeah,
you
I
think,
mean, again,
Robbie?
but it's some of it is the back-to-backs, and I think not playing back-to-backs is very much so leading into load management.
Mhm.
I've heard, and this kind of changed my perspective on it. I've heard that it is medical staff saying you have a history of this. You could really easy, excuse me, you could really easily re-aggravate it. We don't want you to go out there, and I'm sure that's what's happened with Kawhi, Anthony Davis, and players like that a lot. And obviously, you see them get hurt and be out for a while as well. I mean, Anthony Davis
Mhm.
gets hurt all the time. I think there's a reason
Yeah.
that they don't let him play so much. KP is the
Yeah.
same way. Porzingis.
And we talked
There's
about
just
this, like a guy can be really valuable and really skilled and really amazing player, but if he's not ever available, that's got to be part of the solution, right?
I got,
right.
I got to be
Availability is
honest.
best ability.
I got to be honest. I'm pretty torn on this one because I hate to sit the fence, but I'll never forget when Kevin Durant had his pulled calf muscle and was trying to play with it, and he blew out his Achilles, which is absolutely related. So
Mhm.
I think load management has to be done.
But isn't that
There
a
has to
different
be,
situation than these guys that just sit their guy because they want them to be ready
well,
for the playoffs? You know what I
yeah,
mean?
but how do you draw
Different
your line?
situation.
Where does the line get drawn? I'm not sure. I would have to
That's my
study
problem
this
too.
really, really hard and try and come up with rules that incentivize playing. Um, because you can when you're a 7 foot guy and you have a pulled calf muscle, that seems like a wimpy little thing to be on the bench for. But then you go blow out your Achilles and it's a year and a half
Well, isn't the solution
straight
what they're saying
rehab,
here? Isn't
then
the
you're
solution?
hurting next season. Like so, it's I don't know. I think I understand load management. I don't like it, but I get it.
Isn't this?
I think
Isn't the solution, Robbie?
you could cut down a little bit on that with maybe force teams to play more players, possibly incentivize everyone getting in the game so that there's more depth, so that there's a little bit less wear and tear, but they're still playing in the game. So there's more rest time for your stars, I guess, instead of having to load manage, and then you have backups in there the whole time, and that's terrible. I don't know, but then also if you cut down on the number of threes, maybe you have less lunging and just more physicality, but without the soft t tissue leg injuries. Um, I don't know. I think it's a
And what
difficult problem.
and what Cole talks about is true, that these guys who are 31, 32, 34, kind of a little bit older player, when you have
Yeah,
back to backs, a lot of times they're not going to play both. They're either going to play the front end or the back end of the back to back, you know.
yeah.
And that's
I'd
just
rather
not.
have I'd rather have that aging veteran for both games playing a half than I would them play one and sit out the other.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean,
So
this isn't a situation you're going to a college or a high school game where you don't know who half the players are. These people buy the tickets because they want to see the star
Yeah,
play, and half the time they don't play. So it's a
that's right.
problem. And so the idea here is if they do sit out and they're uninjured, they're sitting out because they're resting for either a back-to-back or they're resting because they want to be ready for the playoffs. They should lose a game check. I mean, that's
I
the
think they should incentivize if you sit out the entire game, you don't get your game check
yeah.
unless you are proven to be injured.
Well, that's an interesting one. Any other ways to improve the NBA game you guys can think of?
Not really. I mean, just figure out the tanking situation. I know I've been this entire time been saying I don't have any answers and I don't love the what's been proposed. It's just the product has gotten so bad in the product has gotten so bad in the second half of the year because this is the
Mhm.
time of the year that it's supposed to pick up. I mean, Rob, you said you're going to start paying a lot more attention to the NBA this time of year because the teams have made their trades. This is what roster is going to look like for playoffs.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Just go pick up on these teams. But half the teams, especially this year, I mean, there is probably 10 or 12 teams that are trying to lose on purpose because of how good this draft class
There's
is.
there's a lot of bad teams
that's
this
right.
year. There is.
So it's
There
a
is.
third of the entire league. I mean, most of the you're
Yeah.
watching these games to see these guys play and the new guys on the new teams, the contenders, and see how serious they are of contenders. But every other game they're playing somebody that's, throwing out, G Leaguers and resting their starters in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
It's not a good product, and this is the time of
it's
year to
not good.
have a good product.
It's true.
And you can't and the NBA is always talking about future, next year, this, that, but at some point it has to be about right now, and bad teams should be fighting to get better and competitive, try and climb out of the cellar. Mid teams should be fighting to try and get into the playoffs. Wild card teams should be fighting to become the knock off the favored teams, and then the championship teams need to fight to try to get up on that mountain. So
Yeah.
I don't think there should be tanking at all. I don't think there should be anybody who's not fighting like crazy. They have to incentivize
I mean,
bad teams winning.
And Robbie, there's tanking in the NFL, but it's not as prevalent. You have two or three teams that are tanking for the number one pick, but mostly teams like the Panthers 2 years ago when they were sitting at 3-11, they went on a 4 out of 5 winning streak. They were getting better. They were trying to get better, and a lot of the
But
bad
you know
teams
what's
were.
wild?
So,
Even the NFL teams that are semi-tanking, they're still fighting their guts out because
yeah,
the players don't want to get cut.
and
So
the coaches don't want to get
they're
fired, which they
they're
usually do.
they're fighting for their lives
Yeah,
because they know that there's more change coming to a bad team than there is a great team. And
100%.
if you're solidly a starter, you might be okay, but
It's
if
true.
you're a role player on a bad team, you're gone. And so you're
Yeah.
fighting, putting as much tape out there as you can to make it to another team. It feels like the NBA doesn't think like that.
Hmm. True. Well, Cole, tell us how people can contact you and give us a little bit of background on your great new podcast.
Yeah, thank you. So you got my X right there, my Twitter. I've had this for a couple months. I've been doing high school and lower basketball, kind of scouting, recruiting, writing about players. That's a little what my X is. I'll start talking a little more about play NBA and college basketball in the future, but right now that's what it is. You want to contact me about anything specifically? My email's right there as well. And then I have my own podcast. I started this a lot because of Rob and Thomas telling me I think I should do it. It is called The Open Throne. I've had it for about a month and a half now. I put out 7 episodes. Started putting out episodes once or twice a week, more consistently in the past couple weeks. Mostly NBA stuff. I'll start talking about college basketball. I actually have plans to start doing predictions for the every like Big Five tournaments for college
Hmm.
basketball, like predicting the Big Ten, Big 12, ACC, Big
Hmm.
East, SEC, stuff like that. That'll be a lot of fun. March Madness, once the season's over, start talking about draft talk as well. And just, I plan on talking about music as well a little bit. I haven't got to that part yet. It's been mostly NBA stuff, but just hearing me talk just about similar stuff as I've been hearing here. So,
And I'm going to put a link to your new podcast in the description down below so people can get to it and subscribe to it. And I definitely recommend you do it. And I can't wait to see your new Hornets episode that's coming out. So,
mm,
obviously, being a big Hornets
Yeah,
fan, looking forward to that
yeah,
one.
guys, I can't recommend enough. Go check out this podcast. I watch it to learn as much as I can. He's fantastic, and his guests are always very knowledgeable too.
Yeah.
Extremely dense with information and very entertaining. I can't, Cole's great with a lot of sports. I mean, I'll tell you, his basketball knowledge is really not rivaled by many. And I would go check it out. Go check it out. It's really good watch.
100%. All right, Robbie, final thoughts as we head into the stretch run, getting towards the playoffs. You talked about how exciting this time of year is for NBA and NHL playoffs as they go in parallel. But any final
It
thoughts?
is.
And then we'll go to
I,
Cole.
I think it's a pretty good season we have going here. Very exciting. A lot of good young players. I like the spirit right now of a lot of these teams. I think that it's going to be a good run all the way in now. And yeah, the tanking's a bit of a headline right now. There's a lot of discussions about it, but the focus on the good teams is pretty easy because I think there's a lot of teams making the case that they should be up there. And this is a very exciting time of year where you turn the corner, All-Star weekend behind you, and you make your moves. And there's still a lot of games left in terms of you can make a move up and get into the playoffs if you really fight hard. And you can also fumble it away if you aren't careful, if you get injured at the wrong time, and et cetera. So it's a very exciting time. Great season is underway, and I think that really good basketball is ahead of us.
No doubt about it. Cole, thoughts about the stretch run?
Yeah, I guess final thoughts is that I wish more teams had gone in for this year. I said this a couple times in my podcast already, is that I believe this is the weakest the East has been in a very long time, and frankly, it may be for the foreseeable future as well. And I thought it was weird that the Cavs are the only team that really went all in per
Mm-hmm.
se and made moves to really get better. A lot of teams were subtracting to try and get a little bit better, and that only goes so far in a setting like the playoffs. So that was interesting to me, but it should still be a lot of fun to watch the playoffs. There's so many good teams in the West, and there's a lot of good teams coming up in the future as well. Next couple of years, the Spurs are hot. A couple teams coming out of nowhere, so it should be a lot of fun for years to come.
It is going to be fun. I agree. The West is much better. The East is weaker. Although I'll say that, like you said, the Cavaliers made a move, and really the Hornets made a couple small moves to try to get deeper and make a little bit of a run here. And I think they will. I think they're that good right
And
now.
how
So
about the Nets involved in all these trades? Like,
yeah,
what are they doing? That's funny.
yeah, it's true. It's true. There were some buyers this year I didn't understand. Obviously, the Jazz being the biggest, but
I said it earlier, but I really feel like the context of each trade has to be taken in to what the strategy is going forward into this heavy draft coming up of I think there's so much talent that this is one of the better we've seen in a while. So uh teams are positioning themselves to get their contracts right, to get the positioning of their roster right, and so it's more obvious where their needs are. And I think that helps define a strange trade that doesn't make any sense. I think they're not as strange as they seem.
it's true. Well, Cole Houck, thank you so much for joining us tonight, bringing your NBA expertise. I'm really excited about your podcast that's about to release. And everybody go like and subscribe and look at all the old videos Cole's already put out there. And make sure you like and subscribe this channel as well. And Cole, thank you so much.
Of course, yeah. Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it as always.
We'll see you guys next time on the Sports Guys.
Thanks,
Have a good
Cole.
one.
Good to see you.
Have a great one.
Well.